Hi, I'm Andy Jones, content editor for Plaid's online education program, Let's Paint, and I'm so glad you've joined me today for our color theory video lesson. We're going to explore basic color theory using the primary colors of red, yellow, and blue. I'm going to teach you some vocabulary about color theory. We're going to explore color harmonies and the difference in tints, tones, and shades. I think you're going to find this to be a very interesting lesson. The study of color has only been around since 1665, when Sir Isaac Newton refracted light through a prism and first divided the visible spectrum of light into the colors red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet, or what we consider the rainbow. So it's the rainbow that we're going to be studying in this color theory lesson. I'm just putting out the last of my primary colors, and you may ask, which red or blue or yellow should I use? And it doesn't really matter. You can use any red, any yellow, or any blue for this exercise. You can even, if you want to, you can make a yellow by mixing two different yellows together. If you wanted to mix medium yellow and yellow light together, you can create a harmonious yellow color, which I think is kind of a nice thing to do. And we'll be using this as our primary yellow color. Now, I want to bring something to your attention, that there are lots and lots of color theory videos all over the internet, and every person that teaches a color theory video has valid points. And there are some people who are teaching that red, yellow, and blue are not the traditional primary colors, that the traditional primary colors, or that the only real primary colors, are magenta, yellow, and cyan. And that's a perfectly valid point, but you have to realize that magenta and cyan were not readily available to anyone or any artist 15 or 20 years ago. So that's a relatively new thing. But this method of color theory has been around for quite a while, and I think it's one that most people are at least basically familiar with. So on our color theory worksheet, we are going to actually paint and create this 12-color color wheel. So we're going to start out by painting our yellow section yellow. So I'm just going to pick up yellow paint, and I'm simply going to paint that onto the color theory worksheet. So just paint the yellow on there, and that's really all there is to it. So your first step in learning color theory is pretty easy. Now, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to paint our blue on our color wheel. So you could use the ultramarine blue, or you could use Prussian blue, or I'm just going to quickly brush mix a little Prussian blue and ultramarine blue together. And then I'm going to paint this onto my color wheel in the area designated for blue. So this is moving fast, and it's pretty easy because we're not having to make any color. These are colors that are already made for you. Primary colors really can't be made from any other colors. So your red can be your naphthol crimson or your red light, or a brush mixture of the two. And then we will paint that on the red section of our color wheel. So notice that the red, yellow, and blue are equally distant from each other on the color wheel. Before we get too much further into this, I do want to start using the correct terms for color theory. So we are going to start calling colors hue, because hue is actually what the color is. So this hue is Prussian blue, this hue is ultramarine blue. So that's the name of the color. And as we continue to move through our lesson today, I'm going to introduce the vocabulary to you and make sure that you use the correct term. It makes it much easier when you're trying to describe colors to someone to be able to accurately describe the hue of the color or its value or its intensity. hue, value, and intensity are usually the three main ways that we describe color. So value is how light or how dark a color is. So just looking here on our palette, you could say that this yellow is a lighter value than this yellow. Or generally speaking, yellow is lighter than blue or red. You could say that this is a darker blue than this blue. So Prussian blue would have a lower value or a darker value than ultramarine blue. So that you can start to see now what hue and value are. And then intensity or chroma, I prefer the word intensity, is how bright or how dull a color is. And these colors are all at maximum intensity. I can't make this color red any redder than it is. That's the brightest that color can be as it comes straight out of the bottle. We're going to learn how to lower the intensity or tone the color down a little bit later on. But right now, all of these colors are at their maximum intensity. So we are now going to move on to our secondary colors. So we have our primary colors, and then we're going to have our secondary colors. So on your worksheet, you can see that our secondary colors would be a mixture of red and yellow to make orange. So let's just take our brush and quickly paint in our primary colors as they fit into this area of the worksheet. So we're going to mix red and yellow. We're going to make yellow and blue on the next line. And then I'm just going to switch over and pick up my red color and paint that where we're going to use it. So we're going to have red plus yellow. And then we're going to have yellow plus blue. So I'm just going to paint that in blue, just so that we know where we're going with that. And then we're going to make blue plus red. And we're going to make violet. So most of this is not going to be new or difficult to master. This is what elementary school children, kindergartners, when they're learning their colors, they learn this sort of information. And you're thinking, I'm sure, or asking, if I'm going to make orange, why don't I just open up a bottle of orange and squirt that out? Well, there's nothing wrong with doing that, but it does circumvent the learning process because I want you to learn how orange is made and what you can do to make orange more interesting for you. So I'm going to start out with some yellow, and I want to make sure that I have enough paint to work with. Don't start out with what I would call like a split pea size of paint. You want to go ahead and put out a nice sizable amount of paint to work with so that you're not running out of paint. So we're going to make our orange color. So I'm going to add some red to my yellow. And I want you to get into the habit of adding a very small amount of one color to another color. It's better if you start out with your lighter color and add your darker color to the lighter color. Because if you start to try to add your lighter color to a darker color, you're going to end up needing so much more of it. So I'm just going to mix my red into my yellow to make orange. And please notice that I'm using a flexible blade metal palette knife. You'll get much better results with a metal blade palette knife than you will trying to do it with a plastic palette knife or, heaven forbid, a plastic knife from a carry-out meal or something like that. It's not what you want to use. Buy the best equipment and the best tools that you can, and it will make your painting life much, much easier for you. All right, so I've made an orange color. I can put some paint on my palette knife and compare it to my yellow, and you can see that it's darker. It's not terribly orange, but it's not yellow either. So obviously, I need to evaluate this color, which we were just doing. And the question that I'm asking myself is this orange enough? The answer was no. So I'm going to add some more red to see how we can make this more orange. I would say that there are no wrong answers in color theory or no wrong color mixtures, but there are. you're going to make some colors and you're going to look at them and go, whoa, that is not what I wanted. All right, so let's evaluate this. And I can see that that is not yellow at all. It's much more what I would consider orangey, but I'm not really certain that that's quite orange enough. So I'm always in the habit, and I want you to see what I'm doing over here. So on my paper towel, I'm just folding the paper towel over my palette knife, applying pressure, and then bringing out a clean palette knife. I want you to get into that habit as well so that you don't contaminate your puddles of paint. I don't want to put this kind of orangey color into my red paint. I want to keep that red paint clean because I might want it for something else. So adding a little bit more red. And now I think I'm getting to what I would consider more of an orange color. And I want an orange color that's not too light and not too dark. Just a pleasing orange color. I also want to talk to you about how I am mixing my paint. I am pushing it into a pile. I mix by mashing it up and down, and then I push it back into a puddle, cleaning off my palette knife. And this is, you get into the habit of mixing paint like this. I don't want you to try to stir your paint because that's not going to get you anywhere fast. So mash the paint together and then get in the habit of pushing it back into a pile. When you push your paint into a pile, that creates a mound of paint, and that paint will stay wet or workable longer than if you have it spread out into a thin layer. All right, so I'm going to wipe off my paintbrush that I have yellow paint on, and now I'm going to pick up my orange color, and we're going to come over here onto our color theory worksheet, and we're going to show our secondary color of orange up there, and then we're also going to paint it on the appropriate spot on our color wheel. Some of you will be thinking that this is a very elementary exercise, and it is, but it's important for you to learn how your colors work, because every shade of yellow mixed with, or let me say that a better way, any shade of yellow mixed with any shade of red will give you a shade of orange. Your shade of orange may be completely unattractive to you based on which red and which yellow you used. So you need to try with all of the paints that you're going to be using, become very familiar with how they work with one another. All right, the next colors that we're going to make is our secondary color of green. So I'm going to take some yellow, and I'm going to move it to a spot on my mixing mat. And I love this mixing mat. It is a silicone mat it's got a great kind of matte surface to it. It's great for mixing paint, loading your paintbrush, and it's got, handy references to color schemes, your color terms. It actually has a color wheel on there so that you could refer to it very quickly. Half of it's white if you want to mix colors that are light in value, or you want to see if a color is transparent and how it looks, mix it on the white area. If you want to judge the value more clearly, you can mix it on the neutral gray area. So I have yellow here, and we're going to add blue to it to make green. Now, you could add just ultramarine, or you could add just Prussian blue, or I'm going to add just a little bit of both to this, and we're going to mix this in, and I'm going to make a green color, because any shade of yellow mixed with any shade of blue will give you a shade of green. It may not be an attractive shade of green, or it may not be the green that you want, but it will be a green color. And this is why we need to really be familiar with color theory, because mixing these colors together it's always fascinating to see how each color intermixes with another color. So I've added some more blue, And I'm getting a really nice shade of green here because I want just a nice, what I would consider average shade of green here. And if I were painting a floral design, I probably would not leave this green the way it is. I'm sure I would alter this green color maybe by adding a little red to make it duller, or maybe a little black to make it a little bit duller, but probably not using this green just exactly as it is here. But it's nice to know that I can make this exact shade of green from my yellows and my blues. I'm just going to add a little bit more blue, not too much. Small amount of blue, mix that in just to make this green a little bit more vibrant. Please don't set a timer on yourself for how quickly you need to do this exercise. Better to get a thorough understanding of how your paints work with each other than to just try to get through this exercise as quickly as you can. Now, I'm going to pick up this green color and I'm going to apply it where I'm putting my secondary color so I can see that yellow plus blue equals green. And then I'm also going to paint it onto my color wheel. If you're teaching yourself how to paint, this is a fun exercise to do with a couple of friends who are also interested in painting or who are your kind of creative partners in crime. Get together with each other and all of you paint your own color wheel, mix your colors, get comfortable with the idea of color theory. Doesn't hurt if you drink a little wine along the way. All right, so now we have red and blue are going to be mixed together to create a violet color. So any red, any blue will make any sort of violet color. So I'm going to start out with some red. And I'm going to add blue to this. And you may ask what proportion of red and blue you need. I can't give you exact proportions. All I can do is tell you that you need to mix red and blue together and you'll make violet. This does not have enough blue in it because when I look at this, I can still detect that that's red. And I don't want to see red. I only want to see violet. You're going to begin to train your eye to see color, and you're going to learn to ask yourself, do I need to add this or do I need to add that in order to get where I want to go? All color theory is a roadmap. And it's an old-fashioned roadmap. It's not a GPS. A GPS will tell you in 20 feet you need to turn right. Color theory tells you that you're going to turn right ahead. Don't tell you exactly how fast you're going to get there. So you need to start learning to trust your eyes, trust what you see, but question everything that you're doing to make sure that you are in fact headed the direction that you want to be headed. So as I keep adding bits of blue to this, I want to make sure that when I look at my puddle of paint, that I only see violet, and I am still seeing bits of red. I'm just moving some paint brushes and trying to get my paper towel where I can continue to clean off my palette knife. Again, that is a habit that I want you to get into. It's important that you always work neatly and carefully on your palette. So again, just adding some more blue to my pile of paint here. And I'm beginning to not be able to discern either red or blue with this particular color. And it's hard to see because this is a very dark color. So I'm going to set my palette knife down and I'm going to add some titanium white to my mixing mat because I want to do what's called revealing the color. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a small amount of white, put that down, and then I'm going to mix in just a very, very small amount of my violet color because I want to see what that color really is. Now that I've revealed the color, I can see that that's still actually, now it's a little too blue. I kept adding blue thinking that I was seeing some red there, but now that I'm actually looking at what the color actually is, I need to come back and I need to add some red to this. So this is, I've mixed violet thousands of times, and you just have to keep working at it until you get a violet that is neither red nor blue. And it might mean that you keep adding either red or blue to the puddle of paint until you get there, and that's just what you have to do. So I'm going to take a little bit of this color and move it over here. Need to add just a little bit of white to this so that I can reveal that color a little better. It's more violet than that color, and I think you can see that pretty clearly. So I'm pretty happy with this because it's not looking blue and it's not looking red. The first time that I revealed the color, it was the very blue. So now this time it's a little bit more in the middle there, not blue or red, but actually violet. So we're in a good shape there. Now I'm just going to take my palette knife and I'm just going to scrape away this because I don't need that anymore, and I will need that real estate on my mixing mat as we continue on with the color theory lesson. So just going to clean that up a little bit. And the silicone mat can be cleaned up over and over and over and over again. So it's a really, really useful tool. So I'm going to pick up my violet color, and I'm going to paint that on to my secondary color area and also on my color wheel. And this is just an interesting note that it happens to work out this way, that yellow and violet are opposite colors on the color wheel, and they're also extreme differences in value. So yellow is going to be the lightest color, or the lightest value color on our color wheel, and violet is going to be the darkest value color on the color wheel. So just some interesting things to keep in mind. I find all of this fascinating, and I hope that you will as well. It's a lot to learn, it's a lot to take in, and it's a lot to remember, but it's very important to get a grasp on all of these concepts. We've painted our primary colors of yellow, blue, and red, and we've added our secondary colors of green, orange, and violet, and now we have 6 other colors, and these are our tertiary colors, which are made by mixing a primary color and a secondary color. So I'm going to take my paintbrush, clean it out, and we're just going to do a little bit of speed painting, a little cheating here, if you will. And I'm going to follow my tertiary color chart over here, and everywhere I need to, I'm going to add yellow. So we're going to make a yellow-orange with yellow plus orange. So I'm going to add yellow there. What else am I going to make with yellow? I'm going to make a yellow-green color, so we're going to add yellow down here. All right, then I'm going to use some red to make some colors. So let's just fill in the red where we need that. So we're going to use red and violet to make a red-violet color. And we're going to use red and orange to make a red-orange color. So let's add red there. And then going to paint the blue where we need that, because we're going to use blue to make a blue-green color. And we're going to use blue and violet to make a blue-violet color. All right, so we've painted in our primary colors that we're going to use, And now we're going to paint in our secondary colors that we're going to use. So we're making yellow-orange. We're going to need to add orange. So I'm going to paint the orange. And then where we're going to make red-orange, we're going to need orange here. Then we're going to need green, where we're going to make a blue-green color. So let's add green here. And then we're going to make yellow-green, so let's add green here. And then we just have to add violet in 2 places. So we're going to make a red-violet color, and we're going to make a blue-violet color. So now we have our roadmap laid out in front of us, and we just need to make some tertiary colors. So we're going to start by mixing yellow and orange to make yellow-orange. So I'm going to pick up yellow, and if I need some more, I'm just going to make some more yellow. This is why I was telling you to make enough paint when you start mixing your puddles together. It doesn't bother me to come back and mix a little bit of my primary yellow. So I'm going to take some of that, and I'm going to move it to a clean spot on the palette. And we are going to make yellow-orange. So I'm going to add orange to the yellow. And I want to make a color that's about halfway between yellow and orange. Let's see, that looks a little lighter than orange and a little darker than yellow. So I think that's going to be okay. Now, if you are super particular, you may want to fuss with this a little bit more, and maybe it needs a little bit of yellow so that it's a little lighter. So notice that I'm just mixing in part of the puddle of paint and not completely. All right, let's evaluate. And I will tell you that you cannot evaluate color at any distance. You have to evaluate color right next to the color that you're checking it against. So that's much lighter than my orange color, and it is darker than my yellow. So I think this is actually a better color. If you have ever wondered about judging color from a distance, perhaps you've been in a department store and you found a navy blue pair of slacks and a sweater that you look across the store and you think it's the same shade of blue and you're like, oh, that's going to look great together. And then when you get the pants and the sweater next to each other, you're like, couldn't have been more wrong. Those shades of blue are just not the same at all. So you have to judge color next to color. If there's a gap, you cannot judge the color. So let's paint yellow-orange on our tertiary color swatch and then actually on our color wheel. And it's not so important that your color wheel is painted beautifully as it is that you have the right colors on your color wheel. So we have yellow, yellow-orange, and orange. Let's go ahead and make our next color, which is red-orange. So I'm going to take my orange and I'm going to add some red to it, because I need this to be darker than my original orange, but not quite red. So mix that together. And then we are going to evaluate that color. I'm just trying to get a nice amount of color on my palette knife so that I can judge this. So that looks darker than orange and lighter than red. So I'm going to say that this is pretty good. Good enough for my first attempt at a color wheel. And when I say good enough for my first attempt at a color wheel, that's your subtle hint that you are going to need to probably paint more than one color wheel to really grasp these concepts and not only grasp the concepts, but be able to recall them. All right, so here we're going to paint this over here as red-orange. And then we're going to apply the red-orange color to our color wheel. The study of color really does require you to be a bit of a scholar. You need to be able to, I hate to say this, it's like your multiplication tables, which unfortunately I never mastered in school, but I can certainly talk color. So you're going to want to make sure that you understand how each of these colors is made and why you need to either add more yellow or red to this, and evaluate red-orange so that it sits somewhere between yellow and orange as neither too yellow or too red. Okay. The next color that we're going to make, we'll just keep moving around the color wheel. We're going to make a red-violet color. So red-violet needs to be more red than violet. These color names are not just kind of chosen arbitrarily. They actually describe the color or the hue that we are striving for. So with a red-violet color, I want it to be more red than violet. So I'm going to move some of this color aside. And I'm going to add red to this color. And that doesn't look like it did anything. It did change the color considerably, but it didn't change it enough to make the color red-violet. And so I found myself picking up a lot of red on my palette knife, and I had to stop myself because I want to add the color incrementally. You can get heavy-handed with the color that you're adding, and then you've messed up a whole pile of paint. It's not the end of the world, but you do need to add your color gradually so that you're really paying attention to what you're doing as you're mixing these colors. So this color is now looking a little bit reddish to me, but it's still very, very close to the violet color that we initially mixed. So I'm going to clean my palette knife off. I'm going to pick up some more red. Now, I accidentally got some yellow on my palette knife, so I want to get rid of that. But now I've added violet to my finger. So clean that yellow off. Okay, so now I've got just red, and we're going to mix that in. And it's still not going to be enough, because when I look at it here, that color still looks violet, or it may almost look black to you, but it's not anywhere near showing enough red. So this in between those two colors is not giving me red-violet just yet. So simply a matter of picking up a little bit more red and mixing that in. It's really about getting the right color, not getting a color fast. If you're learning color theory and learning how to paint, I want it to be an enjoyable experience for you and something that you savor all of the time that you're working on it. I know that when I'm painting, I can't really concern myself with, other problems like things like the lawn needing to be mowed. That doesn't enter my mind when I'm painting. It's all about what's happening on my palette and on my paintbrush. And it's just the most relaxing, enjoyable time that I get to spend. So I hope that you will enjoy your painting time as well. Okay, now I am seeing a nice red-violet color here, which you can see is distinctly different from just the violet color. So when you look, it's much darker than red, but it's also much redder than the violet color. So I think this is going to be fine for our color wheel purposes. So I'm going to pick this color up on my brush, and I'm going to paint the red violet onto my tertiary color chart where I have red plus violet equals red violet. And then I'm going to paint it onto my color wheel. Okay, so now I have a color that's between red and violet, and it's a nice dark kind of burgundy color there. It took a little mixing to get there, but having the correct color is worth it. The next color that we need to create is our blue-violet color, and we're going to take some of our violet, and as you can probably guess, we're going to add blue to it. And I want to see a nice bluish color, and it may take several additions of blue in order to kind of revive this violet color. Okay, so that was 2 nice additions of blue. So let me share a tip with you. This is what I would do if I were doing this on my own. I would probably take some blue and put it to the side, and then I would add some of the violet color to it because it's easier to add the darker color to the lighter color and mix that in than it is to continue to add light color to dark color. Okay, so let's see how that looks. It's still pretty dark. So let's clean our palette knife off, and let's move some more blue out. And we'll add some of this color to our blue paint. Again, adding the dark color to the light. And I think this is going to be a much better choice because it's obviously bluer than the violet and much darker than our blue color. So that's going to suit our purposes. So we're going to come over and add this to our tertiary color chart. And then we are going to add it to our color wheel. Okay, just a couple of other colors to go. We are going to now create a blue-green color. So we've got some green. And we're just going to move that over. And I'm going to add blue to it. So we want to make a green, but we want it to be significantly toward the blue side of green. Might want to add just a little bit more blue to that. And then mix that in. You should scrape it together, push it into a pile. I just want to check this color and see how it's going to be. Looks pretty good next to the blue. It's significantly greener. It's darker than the green. I think this is probably going to be nice, a nice color that fits in between there. So let me wipe a paintbrush off, and we will pick this color up and add it again to our tertiary color chart. Blue plus green is blue-green. And then let's paint the blue-green onto our color chart. And our color wheel is almost complete. We just now need to make a yellow-green color. So let's start with our yellow. Just leave that right there. And then I want to add just a small amount of green to this. Need to add just a little bit more because that's not quite green enough. And it is important to continually wipe your palette knife clean. If you get into that habit and never lay your palette knife down with paint on it, then you won't contaminate other puddles of paint. And that's just a habit that you need to get into from the very beginning of your painting experiences. Add just a little bit more green to this mixture because when I check it, I want it to be lighter than my green and yet a little bit darker than my yellow. And I'm thinking that this is probably going to be a pretty nice color to complete our color wheel. So I'm going to pick this color up on my brush, and we are going to add it to our tertiary color chart, where we need to add our yellow-green. And then we're going to add yellow-green to our color wheel. There we go. So hopefully you'll heave a nice sigh of relief and you will see that you have created your 3 secondary colors and your 6 tertiary colors, and now you have a complete 12-color color wheel. Once you master the principles of color theory, you'll become a much, much better painter. So do the exercises and keep painting.